This is Steve Addison for the Movements Podcast, a podcast for people who want to multiply disciples and churches everywhere. Today we're going down to Tulsa, Oklahoma, and we'll be talking to Bryan King, who's on staff at Cedar Ridge Christian Church.
Growth in the church that I'm on staff with now, it's called Cedar Ridge Christian Church. Spent my high school years there in the Tulsa area, and our senior minister now, he was my youth minister. And the church has just always been a church of just a loving church, and a church that's had a heart for other people and for missions as well. And so I was just really blessed to be brought up by that church, and it's kind of my story and the church's story intertwined in that. And I came on staff in 2008. We had spent some time in Mexico on the mission field, my wife and I had, and came home, and we began to work with the home church, opening a new campus of the church, and I'm just really blessed to be a part of that. Probably about a year in, and maybe even sooner, just we had some success in starting the new campus of the church, but just really began to see that there are lots of people out there that we weren't impacting, lots of lost people or hurting people in our community. And so just in me, there was just a real desire to impact those people. I would see them at a convenience store, seeing them in the community, and so just a real desire to do that. At the same time, I think really by the sovereign hand of the Lord, our church really began asking questions about how can we do a better job at reaching people locally, and then also just asking about God's heart for the nations. And so we began to our senior minister, Greg Pittman, he began to lead us through one of the sermon series was David Platt's book, Radical. And if you've been around that book, you know that, he just talks a lot about God's heart for the nations and God's heart for the hurting. And it just began to stir up a lot of things in our hearts as a church and as a leadership. And so we ended up, as a result of that sermon series and some other things, we ended up in visiting some of our workers in North Africa. A couple that had grown, or one of the guys had grown up at our church, and we were sitting around and in a living room, and they said, "Hey, here, we want to show you how we're going to be doing church together." Mm-hmm. And we sat down to a discovery Bible study in their living room, and we all kind of looked at each other. Those who are with us from Tulsa, we kind of looked at each other and we're like, "Why are we not doing this at home?" And after that, they said, "Hey, you need to start listening to a podcast called movements.net." Yeah. So that was kind of our, how we ended up in this world. And when we get hearing these stories of, how God was moving all over the world, but specifically the stories that caught me were the stories from Jeff Sundell in North Carolina, in Booger Holler, North Carolina. And the community that we were a part of it sounded very similar. People hurting and people in poverty, and just people that weren't going to show up at our doorstep of our church and that weren't showing up. And so we began down that road, and then the Lord's just kind of been writing the script since then.
Okay. So you had to go all the way to North Africa.
Yeah.
Just to get back to the simple but powerful things.
That's right.
Wow.
That's right.
And what happened next? What was the next stage in your journey?
Yeah. So, kind of through that, really, I feel like that book and that sermon series, as we went through that, was a pivotal point for us. And one of the things that we talked about through that series was just the unreached peoples of the world and the red dots all over the map. And so that was the reason we made the trip, because this couple, they were working among an unreached people group in North Africa. And so we just began to look. We have a committee, a mission team called Global Outreach Team that has for years been tasked with overseeing mission monies and seeing that they go to the appropriate places. And we began asking the question. I've been privileged to serve as part of that team, along with some lay leaders and some elders and another staff person. And we just began to ask the question, what is mission? And are we putting monies, and then are we doing the things that God wants us to do in the appropriate ways? And one of the things we just began to look at, we said, we see from the history of our church had mobilized some people to the nations even, and to other places on the globe. And then from the word that God really wants to mobilize more people from our church to the nations. And so we began to work very diligently over a period of months and a couple of years to just work towards a plan to how could our whole church be involved in this task. And so a good brother here in Tulsa with Pioneers began just helping us and coaching us. And so we began working towards that. But then one of the things that happened was, back up just a little bit. We came together as a mission group, and then with our elders and our staff, and we just began to say we need to put a kind of a flag in the ground, and we need to say we need to be moving towards something. Mm-hmm. And we began to sense that God really wanted us to lay down a number and say, what's the number we're moving towards? And so we wanted to do something that only God can do. And put our hand to the plow, only something that God could do. And we really felt like God was telling us to mobilize over the next 10 years, that would have been 2 years ago, 50 workers to South Asia. And and then also associated with that, to reach 1,000 new disciples in our community. Okay. And so these were kind of conceptual ideas that we had. And one of the things that we talked about was, at that time, we said, wouldn't it be great if the way we made disciples in Tulsa would be the way that we make disciples in South Asia, and that our church could be a training ground to making disciples on the other side of the world, and our community could be that as well. And so then came along, we reached out to some other brothers specifically on making disciples here locally. And we reached out and met Troy Cooper. Okay. And so he came fall of 2015, along with Dave Miller from Oklahoma City and Clint Harrell from North Carolina, and they did their first touch of training with us. And so we've had other rounds. We had other rounds of training, a second touch and a third touch, and so what happened from that is that we had these people that were waiting. I mean, I'm one of them. They were waiting in the pew. They were called to this work to go. We're all called to that, but really some people, they've just been hungry to go do this in the community. And we saw these people spike up, these evangelistic types, or some people might call them apostolic types, just to go do the work. And they're kind of restless sitting in the church.
First of all, a vision for the 50 workers and to reach, was it 1,000 people?
Right.
In your community. So vision's out there, and then what the training helped surface the people who are ready to go and give that a go.
That's right. That's right. And I mean, to be quite honest, we were probably, we were surprised at some of the response. I mean, there's some response that people go through the training and they're like, there's no way I can do this, and I'm not going to do this. But there's some other people, they've just been waiting to do it. And so that's what we saw. We saw people spike up.
So you didn't have them picked as evangelist, pioneer, disciple maker types until the training.
That's right.
And you saw how they responded. It unlocked something in them.
That's right. In fact, I had people pegged, because at that time I was serving as a campus pastor, and I had people pegged that I thought would go do this, and they weren't they didn't spike up the same way some of these other people did. So. Can
you think of a story or an example of someone who really stepped up as a result of the training, and what happened for them?
Yeah. One family, they've been the family who they bought in early, and they're still bought in. And but a couple by the name of John and Liz. And man, they just he's more pastoral. She's more apostolic, more evangelistic.
Mm-hmm.
But just faithfully have shared the gospel with, going out into the harvest in teams. They have done that, and they do that faithfully. But they also, probably more importantly, they have shared among their oikos, and so they've seen they've seen about 15 people together that they have ministered to, that they've led to the Lord, that they've baptized over the last couple of years. And in fact, just this past weekend, they were able to lead a family member to the Lord, baptize her, and start doing church with her. And so just real faithfulness there, and just to see that they were just waiting. And they were a couple that came along. They come through the front doors of the church. They hadn't been involved in church, and they say, we are so glad that we came along when No Place Left came along. And so, yeah.
Okay. Well, you began the training and did the 3 touches of training. Right. So I guess by the end of that, you've not only got the skills, but you've got people in the life of the church who can run the training.
That's right. Yeah. And so by the 3rd touch, we had, in fact, our second touch, our first touch was rather small. I say rather small, it was about 30 people. And then our second touch, we just put a lot of resources in trying to get people there. And we had about 200 people from our church, which at the time we were a church of about 800. And then we had about 50 people from the Tulsa, the city around other churches that came. And then the 3rd touch, we actually had 5 different trainings across the city. And the majority of those were run by local folks doing that training. And so raising their competencies. And then we've also had the privilege of sending them other places across the United States to help train with other No Place Left teams. And then here in the region as well, of engaging other churches and ministries and training them as well.
And so the thinking of Troy and the outside team was, well, rather than have one big event, we'll actually have 5 training events in the same city on the same weekend. Right. So we can equip 5 training teams for different churches in Tulsa.
That's right.
And then now you're saying, well, not only have we got a training team for our church, but they and others from Tulsa are training around the city, around the region, and in other parts of the U.S.
That's right. Yep.
Well, that's probably why Troy Cooper spends most of his time now just at the beach.
That's right. Yeah, he just hangs out at the beach now. Yeah. So, yeah. That, and he needs to recuperate from the 8 kids. So,
and what's been the impact in the life of your church of this happening?
Yeah, so you see the apostolic folks, the evangelistic types pop up. And so one of the things that we've done with them is that we form them into teams. And so we're gathering, because they'll just run and they'll burn out, right? So we want to put them around, gather them around the 3/3, have them do church together. So they're meeting together on a regular basis. And so we have 2 to 3, we have 3 of these teams that are gathered together out of the local church. But then we're just trying to push some of these tools to the rest of the church. And so majority of our people, they have seen 3 circles. Many of them have been trained to do 3 circles. We're regularly praying for our oikoses in our services. And so one of the things that we're just seeing, I mean, I'm meeting people all the time through our church that in hearing stories of them sharing 3 circles, or they'll say things like this: I was in line at the store and I thought I could share 3 circles. And to me, we could say, oh, that's a failure. No, that's a win, because we're changing the way people are thinking. And so, yeah.
And so they're some of your just ordinary folk. They're sharing with friends and family or neighbors, or even looking to share with someone.
That's right.
The line. And would they know what to do next in terms of discipleship if someone came to the Lord?
Some of them would, and some of them would not. So, and we're trying not to make that a incredibly either or type thing. So we want to, because we realize that we've had people that have been sitting in the pews for decades. And what they know as discipleship is, coming and hearing someone else talk and sitting next to them, encouraging them. And so, but we do want to offer that opportunity, and we continually are offering that opportunity. And then as well through training, that we're still offering regular trainings within the church. And so, and we're probably putting a way heavier emphasis these days on what to do next, rather than probably in the beginning, we were putting a lot of emphasis upon the going and knocking. And so really saying, what is the takeaway from this training? Are there 2 or 3 people that you could go and you could do this 3/3 with? And so just trying to encourage people to take that. So, but it's a journey for people. So I know last night I was visiting with a lady, and who's a part of, we have a group at our house, and they meet and we do church together, a traditional small group that we're just doing 3/3 together. And so we were practicing 3 circles together, and she says, okay, what if he says this? And what if they say this? And then I said, well, you can offer to meet together and to study the Bible together. And she's like, oh yeah, I can. And so just some of those baby steps with some people. That's right.
So you sort of you're letting people, you're not imposing this, and people are coming on at different speeds. And you've got a mixed economy as a church. So you've got 3 teams that we're doing church together in a simple 3/3 pattern, and we're out in the harvest and we're training. And then you've got others that are saying, well, look, I could share the gospel now.
That's right.
I'm praying for 5 people every day. And so in terms of the change, it's making sure you've got room for those that are ready to run ahead, and you're also allowing others just to come on at their own pace.
That's exactly right. And so, a couple other things that we're doing is we have a lady who's going through, and she's looking through when we have harvest teams go out, and they are, they're collecting prayer requests, and they're trying to record those. And we're trying to make a point, write down that prayer need, pray for them, but then write down that prayer need. We're also recording follow-up information on that, but we have someone who'll go in, and she's looking through that list, and she's saying, hey, I can pass this on to other people in the church. So she's sending that we have a prayer list that goes out to the whole church, and she'll send out those requests. So they may not know who this person is, but people can pray for them, or maybe in a Sunday school class or another small group, they can get engaged in that way. And so again, just a simple way that someone can exercise their gifts. And the funny thing is that this lady, one of our harvest times is on Sunday afternoon when we go out, and she's not been super enthusiastic about going out into the harvest. She has gone, but this Sunday she went out. And so, just letting the Lord just kind of open her heart little by little, but she's a faithful prayer and organizer of the information.
Can you think of, a story that would give us some sense of the impact in the community amongst people that were far from God?
Yeah, definitely. There's some different stories. One of them would be a young couple who we met this summer. I didn't meet them, but our senior pastor, and that's one of the things too, our senior pastor has been out in the harvest. He's been out in the harvest regularly, and he talks about it from the pulpit. And so, but we're out in an apartment complex in the middle of Tulsa, lots of ethne in this apartment complex, but he meets him and actually his daughter, and then another gentleman from our church who just been a faithful laborer. They meet this couple, and they offer to pray for them. They pray for them. Actually, they invited them into the house, and they prayed for them. I don't remember the prayer need, but they simply offered to come back and share a story from the Bible. That's all they did. No 3 circles, nothing else. They just offered to come back. So they went back and they shared the story of the sinful woman, and they shared the 3 circles, and they just kept going back every time. And so by the end of the summer, they made a decision to follow Jesus. They were baptized. In fact, he was baptized by Steve, one of our guys. and then Daniel baptized Laura. And so they've been learning how to follow Jesus, being met with every week in their house, doing church together. And then the cool thing is they now are going into the harvest. And so just the last couple of weeks, Daniel and Laura are both individually with other people. They're discipling other people, doing church with them. And so it's just really cool. Another story would be a guy by the name of Tony. And he's a guy that we met, him and his wife, about 1.5 years ago. And this is, we met them right during our first training. The first time Troy came, and all we knew at that point was just to pray for him and his wife. So we began to pray for his wife. We got trained, and then we kept going back. We probably went back about 10 times, and we ended up sharing 3 circles with them. And so that night we shared 3 circles with him. He said, "Yeah, I want to follow." Well, he had been in jail. He had been on drugs. His wife had kicked him out of the house, and just at the end of himself. Ended up in rehab, and then a few months later, after he got out of rehab, they wanted us to come to the house. So we came to the house and began to do discipleship, church in their house. He was baptized a few months later, and then again the process repeated. So putting their lives back together, watching the Lord work in their lives, and then, in fact, watching him this last year. I think maybe he led to the Lord about three different people, baptized them. And so pretty cool stuff, taking somebody from in brokenness, and the Lord just raising them up to pass it on to other people. Yeah.
And you're just passing on the simple training that Troy and the team first did with you.
That's right.
The basics of how to share the gospel, how to find a God-prepared person, how to lead someone to Christ, and then follow up with discipleship by reading the Bible.
That's right. Yeah, we're using just simple prayer question, and then these days we're sharing the gospel very, very soon, and kind of judging where they are, but we're offering to come back if they have some interest. And then once they're believing, we're training them in the 411. We're training them in identity, and then quickly moving into the commands of Christ with them.
And typically, it sounded like some of these new believers are becoming part of church starts in the community. Typically, is that the way they go, or are some people attending Cedar Ridge at the
right
at the normal service?
Right. Yeah. In fact, the 2 examples I gave, they actually they attend on a regular basis at the service with Cedar Ridge. We never invited them, though. They just kind of shown up, and so we're not inviting, nor are we prohibiting that. We're just we're just kind of letting them do what they want to do. And what we're finding is that for some of those people, we have some people that they're having church in their house and they're not showing up. And so, but for some people, I don't know if it's something cultural that's awakening in them that they feel like they need to come, and that's fine. So this one couple that I mentioned from the summer, they have been attending, and the cool thing that has happened with them, because they've attended, they've heard about our South Asia vision. And so they begin to say, maybe that's for us, and so that was kind of a thing that we talked about at the very beginning is, wouldn't it be cool if God took lost people, right, raised them up, and then he sent them to the other side of the world?
Yeah. And you said the role of your senior pastor has been important. So he's leading by example. He's out in the harvest, even with his daughter. What else has been helpful that in terms of his support of this whole focus?
Yeah, I mean, I think just kind of going back to the Radical series, right? He just has a conviction that we should be committed to things that matter to God, and so that just goes a long ways. And so he's bought in. Our elders are bought in. Our staff is bought in on this vision of moving forward, that we want to be, this is what we want to be about. And so, so he talks about it, but then he also does it. And so, to me, that's super important. So just support, so very supportive of those who are laboring as well. I mean, yesterday we had a training, and so I know Greg is super busy, but we had a training after church, and he makes a point to come in and just to show his support. He didn't stay the whole time, but just to let people know that he's excited that they're there. Yeah. And so, yeah, that means a lot. Yeah.
Now, is it right the church has set up a residency program?
That's exactly right.
Tell us, so this is towards your goal of sending out 50 people to the ends of the earth, many of them to South Asia. So what's that look like?
Yeah, well, we started off, I referenced a plan that we were just kind of rolling with and really kind of pulling resources together from different things that we knew about from the mission world, and from sending agencies to organizations that prepare workers. And we had in our mind, we were going to take people that popped up out of our local strategy. We were going to take them and farm them out and let somebody else raise them up. And so we had in mind a couple of different organizations that would do that. We'd send them away, like to another city.
Yeah.
And so we just, Troy, again, he spent time with us. He learned about this vision. And so he's like, this is coming out of South Asia. Like this strategy, it's coming out of the Bible, but we're learning this from brothers and sisters in South Asia. Yeah. And so I'm like, I know that. And so we ended up on the phone with some brothers in South Asia and just began to talk us through, like, what are you trying to do? So we talked about that, the way we want to make disciples in Tulsa is the way we want to do it over there. And they're like, well, yeah, this is it. And so really going back to that strategy that we were moving towards. And so 4-field strategy of moving towards that, and not only here locally, but across the sea as well. And so really, at that time, they're just like, you guys are the best. You're the best people to train your people to do this. And of course we're like, no, we're not.
Yeah. We don't know what to do.
Yeah. We're just figuring this out as we go along. And so at that time we had one young lady who the Lord had told her when she was 12 that she was to be a missionary. And we had gone to her and we said, hey, this is what the Lord's been stirring in our lives or in the life of the church. Before we announced it to the church, would you be interested? And she said, yeah, I would definitely be interested in going to South Asia. And so we had this one, and just with Troy and Justin White out at Southeastern Seminary, just began to put together what would a residency look like. And so basically we're doing the same things that we're doing in the harvest. So we're doing these residents, they're doing church together, they're practicing church together, and then they're committing themselves to go into the harvest, share the gospel, start churches, start groups, train other Christians to go do the same thing. And so but we didn't know it could be that simple. It's not easy, right? But it's simple. And so we went from this is a year and a half ago, we went from one young lady who was had her mind set on South Asia to, we ended up with about 13 starting out. First, the residency launched last August. About half of those said, hey, we are headed to South Asia. The rest said, hey, we want to be a part of a group that's serious about making disciples and starting churches here in Tulsa. Mm-hmm. And so today, still about that same ratio. We have 2 families next fall who will be moving to South Asia. Again, this young lady and her boyfriend, they're a little further along the lines, but they're in the pipeline, but they're all laboring here locally, and they're all part of the church as well.
So you already have some idea of their readiness, their ability, their character, before they go overseas.
Yeah, it's incredible. So, and we have this is the other thing too. The Lord just really provided that. I'm kind of the go between here, right? Between South Asia and Troy working with us, and Troy saying, "Hey, start a residency," and I'm like, I don't think I have the margin for that. And the Lord, I was making the sell, just saying, "Hey, I think we need to think about this." To our leadership, and one of the guys is like, yeah, we need to do it, and my wife and I, we want to lead it. So this is a guy, him and his wife are, they have regular jobs, and they stepped up and they've been leading that. And so it's just been really incredible to see them do that.
And so they're doing this as volunteers?
Yeah, they are.
And the people in the residency, are they also volunteers or, yeah? So
they are.
So they will be committing, I guess, they're doing it in addition to their full-time study or jobs.
That's right. Yeah. Well, there's one guy who's a student. The rest of the folks are working full-time, have families. And then they're putting in a minimum of 7 hours a week. They meet together as church, and then, they're laboring faithfully every week. And so, for some of them, they're putting in more time than that. And so,
but you have a minimum of which is, 7 hours is the commitment of any committed volunteer to say, well, I'll give, because that includes them meeting as church, them being in the harvest. I'd imagine too, some of their time is either being trained or training others.
That's right. Yeah. So they've gone and trained other churches. They're attempting to duplicate the process that we have received with other churches as well. And they've done that as a team.
So this is a $0 church planting school.
That's right. It hasn't cost us anything. The only thing it's cost us, we have chosen to, at times to buy meals or to provide childcare for certain events. That's the only thing it's cost us. It's incredible. Yeah.
And now you have people in the pipeline.
That's right.
Who are going to South Asia. And I would imagine, because they're coming from a church that's been a part of their call, has seen them in ministry, the church is going to want to support people like that. That's
right. And they're just starting to amp that up, these two families. And it's pretty incredible. It's funny that you asked that question, because one of the guys grabbed me yesterday and he said, I need to tell you something. We're going through a stewardship campaign right now. And so just talking about the importance of giving. And he just said that one of the families in the church came to him and said, the Lord told us to give you this gift. And it was a substantial gift. Yeah. And so just to see the church respond, and then even we're working on plans to involve the rest of the church, some of the rest of the church, in caring for them.
Yes.
As they go overseas. And hopefully we can continue to move that forward. So while they're in the future, while we have people laboring here, that they can care for them, while they're here laboring, and just to shepherd folks who are laboring at this capacity.
So the whole church, in a sense, has a way of being a missionary church in its own community, and to be raising up and releasing people, I guess, focus South Asia. Some may end up in other places, but that's and it also gives you I'm just catching up to what's going on here. It gives you the chance then, when your people visit the field, is they already know, well, I know how, if I have a local with me, I can share my story. I can share the gospel. Right. I can not just sort of sit around and I'm a tourist here for the full missionary, but I can help. And then there'll be locals who could continue the work that had been started during that trip.
That's right. And that's the vision. And I'm super excited about that as we move forward. And this summer we had the opportunity to kind of see a glimpse of that. We have, again, one of our guys who's preparing to go overseas. He led a group of youth sponsors and students, about 15 in total. And they actually went to South Asia. And they were trained ahead of time. They'd been practicing at some level ahead of time, and they went over. They're working with other brothers and sisters over there who've been preparing and targeting fields. And they went in and they engaged fields, and they offered prayer. They shared the gospel, and they saw, I think the number was 300 some professions of faith, some 30 plus churches, groups started, and they left it in the hands of those local leaders. And so these were students and youth coaches. And so we're again, it was an incredible time for them, but the connection wasn't quite there. When we get people over there, our people, it's just going to be like steroids, man, we were there with such and such. And so, yeah.
There'll be 16-year-olds who go over on those trips. Their lives will be changed. And a few years later, they'll be in South Asia themselves.
That's right. That's the hope and the prayer.
You will have seen their development from teenage years into mobilization in South Asia.
Last night in our house, we meet with this group doing church together. And there's this 6-year-old. We're practicing 3 circles. And the 6-year-old gets up in front of all of the families, and he does 3 circles.
Wow.
And, that's been the thing for us. I think there's stories in the harvest of God doing great things. And we are motivated by that. That's, that there are clients, as some have said, right? But to see the change in families and people to that, I think they had meaning, but to see a 6-year-old and a family say, man, look, we can be on mission with Jesus and make a real difference. And then to see what he might do through that is incredible.
Well, if you've enjoyed this episode, why don't you get on social media and spread the word about how local churches can be fueling movements that go to the ends of the earth. I'm Steve Addison for the Movements Podcast.